Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. Winston Churchill. We'll now explore a little bit of the history of Newcastle Unitarians and our church. The Unitarian community in this city can trace its history back to the 17th century. After the English Civil War, Puritanism was briefly imposed on the country, but in 1662, following the restoration of Charles II, the Act of Uniformity required all clergymen to agree to the teachings of the Anglican Common Book of Prayer, and those who refused to conform to this, non-conformists as they were called, could be fined, imprisoned, and ejected from the clergy. In the end, only the well-respected Puritan preacher William Durant was left in Newcastle. To avoid persecution, he and his congregation began meeting in private houses in secret. And his congregation included some notable officials of the city, including mayors, sheriffs, and aldermen, which is probably how he avoided open prosecution. Durant is effectively considered the first Unitarian minister. Another minister from Cumberland, Dr. Richard Gilpin, established a second congregation in Newcastle, and he is considered to be the father of this congregation. One notable point about these congregations is that they rejected the idea of the Holy Trinity, favouring a single vision of God. In 1672, after 10 years of secrecy, some of the legal restrictions were lifted. Richard Gilpin had the first proper non-conformist meeting house in Newcastle, built in 1680 near the Tyne Bridge. And when William Durant died in 1681, Durant's congregation merged with Gilpin's at that meeting house. Durant was not allowed to become buried in consecrated ground, so he was buried in the grounds of his own home, roughly on the site of the Tyneside Cinema. When the cinema was being built, his gravestone was found, having stood against a stable wall for 100 years, and you can now see it proudly on display out in the vestibule when you enter and exit this church. The badminton and theatre hall opposite is named after him. In 1726, the congregation bought a recreation field at Hanover Square behind Central Station in order to build a new church and a square of private residences. In the end, only the church, 2 homes were completed, but the congregation remained there for a full 127 years. The most well-known minister at the time was the Reverend William Turner, who served for nearly 60 years. He founded the first Sunday school in the north of England. He helped found the Literary and Philosophical Society and the Mechanics' Institute, and he was a prominent anti-slavery campaigner. The smaller meeting hall downstairs is named after him. As the railways grew, this meant that the Hanover Square Church was cut off and no longer appropriate, so the congregation moved to Newbridge Street, where the City Library now stands, in 1854. This was the time when the congregation stopped being referred to as independent dissenters and they began to call themselves Unitarians. Sadly, the building subsided and had to be demolished in 1938, and so a new church was needed. This one. This glorious Art Deco building was designed by visionary architect Robert Bernstick, a gifted designer working in the strict classical style, with simple block forms and plain shapes. Bernstick designed the Tyne Bridge Towers and the Pilgrim Street Police Station, as well as cinemas, you may be able to tell. This wonderful space is reminiscent of the famous early 20th century American architect, Frank Lloyd Wright. This church has many similarities with the Illinois Unity Temple, a Unitarian Universalist church. The pews, the choir stalls, pulpit and reading desk are all oak with a wave motif, echoed in the blue theme on the walls and in the subtly stained glass windows. The building opened on the 21st of January 1940 under the Reverend Herbert Barnes, who was a force of nature and was much respected by the congregation. This building has seen a great community blossom here, with a strong amateur dramatics group, badminton, Sunday school, a women's league, regular outings, events, painting, keep fit, dancing, even karate. As we continue our worship in a spirit of tolerance, freedom, support, and free religious faith, affirming peace, compassion, justice, and the unity of the human family, let us remember that a church is the people, the community, and not the building nor the bricks. So last year's words belong to last year's language, and next year's words await another voice. And to make an ending is to make a beginning. T.S. Eliot. Ben is now going to share with us some extracts from Herbert Barnes' inaugural service in this building, along with his own thoughts.
I want to do a reading now that marks the solemnity of this occasion, the final time we will all worship together in the Church of the Divine Unity main church hall. Whatever the future holds, this is the end of an era. It has been nearly 82 years since this church was opened and dedicated to the Unitarian faith. These are some extracts from the opening services. If you want to read the actual services, they're available in a little commemorative booklet. I've cut out exactly who said what just for reasons of flow. These were the first words spoken in our beautiful church, and I felt that they should also be among the last. I've edited these speeches to befit a final rather than a first service, and I've edited them to include our present circumstances. The memory of this hour shall abide with every one of us in all its precious worth throughout the days of our life. You, my friends and brethren, have been privileged to be the last company to hallow these walls with songs of glad thanksgiving to our God, to fill this house with the incense of adoration and praise. You, my friends, have seen fate rob you of the cherished house of God, hallowed by 1,000 precious memories of spiritual joy. You've seen that house razed to the ground, not by calamity from without, but by the corroding hand of time. We on the management committee, past and present, have been faced, amid all the pressing concerns of our everyday lives, with the tremendous task of building anew. A task fraught with many an anxiety and uncertainty. At times, many have feared it would dishearten us, give rise to procrastination and suspense for which nobody would have blamed us. But there are those amongst us, all praise to every one of them, who have taken to this task with vision and zeal, to whom no obstacle can prove insuperable, and no venture of faith too daring, who have struggled forward in united effort towards what we hope is the right future for this magnificent building of ours, and the right future for our church. The church is the people, not the building. We have never forgotten that. This church, like Mount Zion in the holy city, shall be a centre whence the everlasting light shall shine, however deep the darkness, and whence everlasting word shall be sounded forth, until the hearts of men be won to the message of love and peace. This church stands for no narrow doctrine of an exclusive sect, no way of salvation for the few, but for an all-embracing gospel of redemption for mankind. It is but one modest sanctuary among millions, thy church, our broad humanity. Sometimes one feels there has been too much defeatism in our churches, much too much acceptance that organized religion is on the wane, and that what is left of it is concentrating behind dogmatic bars. And then you get a place like this, and you know it is not true. And you know that a faith such as ours can conquer the present-day materialism of the secular religions and once more set our minds free. We stand for the two great qualities of reason and freedom. The attempt has always been made to ground our faith on sure intellectual foundations, which should stand secure without the need of creeds. Revelation is a gift of light. Our Church's greatest contribution to the present-day world is to awaken in men and women a keen sense of the reality of the presence of God. To stand for that reality in this community, this corner of England, we, the congregation, stand here today. There comes into my mind now the great myth of the phoenix. Every 500 years, that mysterious, beautiful bird builds for itself a funeral pyre, mounts upon it, fans it into flame with the beating of its own wings, and perishes in the divine flames. But the story doesn't end there. Forth from the ashes comes a new phoenix, beautiful and vigorous, with all the freshness of youth. From the ashes of the old order came a finer one. We will seek to enlist the disciplined minds of men and women, to recruit the fresh ardors of youth, to rejoice in the work that makes our world a better, cleaner, happier, and more peaceful home. Let that spirit fill this church, fill our hearts and minds, and guide us forward. The Church of the Divine Unity has built its own funeral pyre. Like a phoenix, it will rise from the ashes. We will rise from the ashes. We will be reborn.
Thank you very much, Ben. David will now share a story for all ages on change and transformation. Thank you, David.
There are many versions of the Phoenix legend, and you'll find the story of a magical bird that burns itself up only to be reborn in the myths and legends of many cultures. This retelling of the Phoenix story is by Bassa Ghosh. One day, when the world was still very young, the sun looked down and saw a magnificent bird. The bird was beautiful and had shimmering feathers. They were bright red and gold in colour and shone like the sun itself. The beautiful bird dazzled the sun. Glorious phoenix bird, you shall be my bird and live forever, the sun called out. After hearing the sun, the phoenix was overjoyed. It danced around in the sky among the clouds. Glorious sun, from this day onwards, my songs shall be for you alone, the phoenix said. But the poor bird was not happy for long. It was so magnificent that everyone wanted to have a feather from it. All kinds of men, women, and children chased the phoenix, attempting to trap it. The bird was incredibly upset, so it thought, I shall fly away and go east. I shall fly to the land of the rising sun. The phoenix flew and flew. It flew for a very long time. At last, the phoenix came to the desert. The desert was free from all humans. It flew freely in the desert, singing the praises of the sun above. The phoenix was happy and peaceful in the desert. It spent its days flying and singing. Years passed and the phoenix did not die. Almost 500 years later, the phoenix grew old and feeble. It could not soar high among the clouds, nor could it sing as it used to. I don't want to live like this, told the phoenix. I want to be young again. I want to fly and sing again. So the phoenix sang, "O glorious sun, make me young and strong again." The sun did not listen. The phoenix sang and sang. Day after day, the old phoenix sang to the sun. When the sun did not answer, the phoenix decided to go back to the land it came from. There it would call out to the sun one more time. It flew across the desert, over hills, green valleys, and high mountains. The journey seemed to be tiring and long to the old phoenix. Whenever it stopped, it would pick up some cinnamon bark or some fragrant herbs. It carried some of its clothes and hid the rest in its feathers. Finally, the phoenix reached its destination. There the phoenix found a tall tree and set to building a nest there. It built the nest with the cinnamon bark and lined it with the herbs. Then the phoenix found a nearby tree and collected some myrrh. It made an egg out of the myrrh and carried it to the nest. Now everything was ready. So the phoenix lifted its head and sang one last time. "O glorious sun, make me young and strong again." This time, the sun listened. The sun swiftly chased the clouds and put the winds to rest, and shone down on the hillside with all its power. A blinding sight it was. All the animals ran back to their caves and hid away from the sun's fierce rays. Only the phoenix sat on its nest. It bathed in the sun's light. Suddenly, there was a flash, and the phoenix was surrounded by fire. The flames died out after a while, but the phoenix was nowhere to be seen. The tree and the nest were not burnt. All that was left was a silver-grey ash. The ash began to tremble and rise upwards. Slowly, a young bird's head popped out. It was very small and stretchy, but the bird grew as every minute passed by. Finally, the bird was itself again. The phoenix had risen from the ashes. It lifted its neck and spread out its beautiful wings and soared high into the sky. The phoenix picked up the ash and put it in the egg. Then it closed the egg and flew away with it in its claws. It sang, "Sun, glorious sun, I shall sing my songs for you alone, forever and ever." When the song ended, the wind began to blow again. All the birds came out of hiding. Birds of all kinds and sizes flew behind the phoenix. "You are the greatest bird of all. You are our king," they sang together. The phoenix and the birds flew towards the city of the sun, to the Egyptian temple of the sun. There the phoenix placed the egg at the altar. "And now I must fly alone," said the phoenix, and flew to a faraway desert. The phoenix lives there still. But every 500 years, when it grows weak, it returns and builds a cinnamon nest with fragrant herbs. It sings to the sun again and is surrounded by flames. And each time it rises from its own ashes, young and strong again. Story for always.
I'd now like to invite Louise to share a thank you address.
Hello everyone. Many of you know me. For those who may not, I am Louise Reeve and I am the chairperson at Newcastle Time Unitarians. Since the decision was made to sell this building, I've had the same conversation a few times with fellow Unitarians and some Christians of other Christian denominations. How's it going at Newcastle? Oh, quite busy, thanks. We're selling our building. That's sad. No, it isn't. Often I then have to explain that selling the building is not the same as closing the church. There is a tendency to identify a church with its building, and sometimes even, I think, as its building, which I can understand. Many congregations have had only one building as their home throughout their entire existence. Here at Newcastle, as the large grey stone plaque in our entrance hall indicates, we have had 5 plus private meeting houses at the very start of our existence as Unitarians. Moving on to a new home, or as we are now doing something creative with the old one, is not as big a change for us as it might be for some other congregations. As a quick recap for those who are wondering, we are in the process of selling this building. We had hoped to have completed the sale by now, but as with so many things, the pandemic got in the way. We're selling it to Tyneside Group Limited, and this may not be the last ever service held in this hall, but it will be the last one held in it in its current form, or so we hope. We're trying to make arrangements with Tyneside Group that following its sale and refurbishment, we will meet once more in the small downstairs Turner Hall, where we were meeting for worship regularly until, unfortunately, the pandemic intervened. We will soon be going on to having services online, and I'll keep everybody updated about that. We are looking also for a room for people who do not do Zoom at home to meet in, so that they can watch the service. That's where we are at the moment, so a quick recap there. People do get very attached to their spiritual homes. Of course we do. The idea that a place has an essential character or spirit, particularly if it's a place of worship or spiritual practice, is an ancient one. The Romans called it genius loci. The ancient Celts believed that many spirits inhabited the natural world around them, and humans needed to pay them due respect in order to survive and thrive. Closer to our time, the Norwegian architect Christian Moorburg Schultz describes the notion of the spirit of place, saying that a place is a space which has a distinct character. Since ancient times, the genius loci, or spirit of place, has been recognised as the concrete reality humanity has to face and come to terms with in our daily lives. Architecture means visualising the spirit of place, and the task of the architect is to create meaningful places whereby they help human beings to dwell. Certainly, Cackett, Burns, Dick and McKellar, the architects who designed this magnificent building, did a spectacular job of creating a meaningful place. This is a building unlike any other in the city, and unlike any other Unitarian worship space I know of, with perhaps the exception of the Unity Temple of Chicago, which we mentioned earlier. Maurice March has done some excellent writings on the similarities between the two buildings, and if anyone would like more information, I'm more than happy to send it. So at this point, I would like to say thank you to those past architects, to the congregation who commissioned them, and to Reverend Herbert Barnes. A quote from Maurice March's history of our members and ministers. He could not have known that halfway through his ministry, the church would be faced with having to demolish the building as it became unsafe for public use. The congregation faced the inevitable and, supported and encouraged by their minister, found the site in Ellison Place. Its opening in 1940 was an occasion of great joy, though tempered with sadness for Herbert Barnes, whose wife Beatrice had died only 2 months before. Thus, he was faced with a similar situation to the one I'm in right now, on Sunday, March 26, 1939, when he preached the final ever sermon in the old Church of the Divine Unity, which stood where the city might be in Newcastle now stands on New Bridge Street. He was, of course, far better trained and experienced at doing this sort of thing. If anyone's wondering why we have our interesting name, the Church of the Divine Unity, it's due to the forceful character of one of our other former ministers, Reverend George Harris, who was minister here between 1845 to 1859. It was through his leadership that that earlier building was built, and at this point we acquired that distinctive name, to quote Morris once more. It is said that Reverend Harris declaimed during an argument with the trustees, "If the Church of England can have a Church of the Holy Trinity, then we can have a Church of the Divine Unity." I've spoken in earlier services I've led here about Reverend Barnes's robust rebuttal of the view that the Church has had its day. It's funny they were having that discussion back in the 1930s. I guess it's an awful. Ben has already read us an extract from the inaugural service in this building. In Reverend Barnes's final sermon within the Old Church of the Divine Unity, he quoted from Charles Ram Kennedy's book, The Servant in the House. You must understand that the Church of the Living God is no dead pile of stone and unmeaning timber. It is a living thing. It is made up of the beating of human hearts and the nameless music of human souls, the numberless musings of all the dreamers of the world. Sometimes the work goes forward in darkness and sometimes in blinding light, sometimes beneath the burden of anguish, and sometimes to the tune of a great laughter. We will soon sing our hymn, The Church is Not Where Altar Stands. In doing so, we do not reject the importance of buildings or the spirit they embody to their congregations. We acknowledge and thank this building for everything it has done for us in its form as it is now, and for the community it's been part of for so many years. Adult education groups, dance classes, musical and dramatic performances, sports clubs and Weight Watchers have all met here over the years. By selling our building to be refurbished so that more people can use it, we are both securing our own future and giving a gift to the people of Newcastle on Tyne. We are preserving its history and status as a listed building and ensuring that such a big space in the very heart of our city can be used to benefit our community. It has served as well as our meeting house and worship space for many years, and now, in addition to this, it will continue to serve us by both continuing to be our meeting place, so we hope it all goes well, and helping to secure our financial future. I would like to say thank you at this point to the ministers and trustees over the years who have preserved this building and worked hard to get us where we are now. I think at the time it was first mooted to sell the building, I was leaving primary school, so it has been quite some time. Thank you especially to Dr. Barry Thomas, Maurice Large and David Venus for their hard work in recent years. We do face considerable challenges. As we've seen in the past year, keeping the congregation together in a changed world has been at times difficult and draining, but it's also offered us new possibilities. We are joined today by many people who are on Zoom, and I welcome you into our space. You are welcome here, and thank you so much for joining us from across the UK. It has been wonderful in the past year to be able to welcome people both within this space and within the virtual space to worship together. That's something we have not had before, and it's been a wonderful thing. Our mission in future is going to be to offer a space in which all are welcome here, where people in Newcastle who are spiritual explorers can join our community in fellowship. Our forebears commented in the souvenir booklet at the opening of this building, not the least remarkable thing about this building is that it is here, an accomplished fact. The difficulties which faced minister and congregation when it was realised that the church in Newbridge Street must be abandoned required extraordinary bravery to meet. These difficulties were increased enormously by the apprehension of war and then the tragedy of war itself. And yet what seemed insurmountable has been surmounted. The Wonder Church is there. Let us become once more a Wonder Church, not because of the size and grandeur of our building, magnificent as it is, but by going forward in faith and creativity. Let us lead the way for Unitarianism in the North East and show Unitarians across the UK that creative solutions can be found to solve complex problems. Let's serve our community by asking ourselves what the spiritual needs of the people of Newcastle in 2021 and beyond are, and how we can work together to help meet those needs. Inspired by our own spiritual connection to truth, whether we name it the living God, the divine mystery, the truth within, or something else, let's build on the past to go forward into the future. And to quote once more for Reverend Barnes, as he preached the final words of the final service in the old building all those years ago. Often as I have stood in this pulpit to urge the truths of life upon the hearts of men and women, I have felt myself to be surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. Tonight, as I leave it, I salute the memory of those who have preached here and the memory of the loyal people who have worshipped in the pews. This place is dear to us because of the sacred experiences we have had here, some of the deepest and holiest of life. I would inspire you with the thought that as we say goodbye, the world and life move on and claim our allegiance. So let us now move on into our future. May it be so.
I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. Isaiah 43:19. This building has seen many people sharing in community, enjoying events and making memories. Jean will now kindly share a handful of such memories and well wishes given by past members and worship leaders.
From the Reverend Roger Talbot. Roger Talbot was our minister at Newcastle upon Tyne Unitarian Church between September 1977 to 1994, and the pastor here between 1996 and 2004. In October 1977, I was a stranger and he took me in, but I was immediately surrounded by such warmth and friendship that I was a stranger no more. When I finished training at Manchester College, Oxford, as it was then, I would have been welcome at any one of 5 churches, perhaps because I was the only minister to come out that year. But from the very beginning, I knew that I had done the right thing in accepting Newcastle's invitation. Some people say that a new minister should change his or her church after 5 years or so. But I was happy here, and as far as I could see, the congregation were happy to have me. So I moved. Moreover, I'd been told that the honeymoon would last a year. But as I said at my last service on this day, the 3rd of October in 2004, the honeymoon never ended for me. After years of wandering in spiritual loneliness, I'd found a home and a lot of wonderful people, my spiritual kin. How sweet it would be to stand there with you now and feel those walls enfolding us in benediction. The church building has been a focus and a spiritual home for so many. Addressing the building, I would say, you, dear building, the only church in my ministry, filled our days with love, and we, in love, looked after you, your roof, your bricks, your floors, your heating, your drains, and of course, your inner place of peace and worship, with its solid furnishings, its surrounding halls and rooms, for some years with 6 pianos, and its space, with its churchy smell of polished oak, hymn books and flowers, and its fine organ. And all of this has been looked after by teams of dedicated members. I can't mention names, there are too many. But all of them gave, and some are still giving, so much for so long. None of it has been lost, because gifts of the Spirit never die. When you, dear friends, move from this haunted place, the Spirit will go with you. I know it will, because you have good people to energize and inspire you. I always said that the first work of the minister is to inspire, and to inspire is the work of the church, which is the spirit of its God, its people in God. Of all my fond memories of this church, one stands out perhaps the strongest: the Christmas tree and toy service. This service had been unchanged for many years before I arrived, and I was allowed to interfere with it because it was magical and the people loved it. Now I have 25 Christmas tree and toy services, all unchanged in one precious scene and held in the memory of myself standing there just outside the open door. Display of colour and music and joy. The choir is singing around me after we've all processed out, with the organ softly playing Silent Night and the congregation singing seated. The main lights are off, except for the cluster above the Christmas tree, which one year nearly reached the lights. The mountain of toys for the Salvation Army to distribute lies all around the foot of the tree. 25 years in this wonderful scene, It was my privilege and my very great pleasure for all that time, and to remember as I do now. An elderly lady in Plymouth touched my cheek and said to me before I came here, "God bless you wherever you land." Yes, and God bless you, my good friends. Wherever you land. This is memories from the Millennium Book, purchased in the year 2000. Sunday school, my congregation member, Louise Coulson. I have many fond memories of attending the church Sunday school in 1968 or thereabout. One of the traditions in the Sunday school was having a special birthday chair to sit on when it was a birthday. I also remember a plate with birthday candles on it which were lit. Each Sunday we would sit in a large circle, listening attentively to our teacher, Miss Evelyn Eden. At intervals, we'd all sing along to the Dorset hymn, which was played by Mrs. Lillian Gardner. Halfway through things, the collection was taken, followed by the handing round of a dish of sweets. I always enjoyed the time set aside for making crafts and getting stuck up with glue. There was also a large old drawer which was filled with sand to play with. These childhood memories from another congregation member, Alan Wright. For as long as I can remember, I've lived with the Church of the Divine Unity, having been christened there by the Reverend Herbert Barnes in October 1928. I recall the money-raising functions held in the new Bridge Street building, Unity, as it was so fondly known, when Mother used to bake pasties at home, and my job was to go on the tram to the church with full baskets and return with empty ones for refilling. Many discussions were held at home about the design of the new Unity, and when construction started, my father used to take me to witness progress and to explain to me how the structure was taking shape. The war came and I was evacuated to Sea Houses, and when it was time for the new church to open, my parents would not allow me to leave the safety of Sea Houses and return to Newcastle for the event. But a few days afterwards, I received a copy of the souvenir brochure in which Mother had marked R4 seats on an illustration of the church interior. On occasions during the war, when Mattie was home on leave from the army and I was home from school, we were honoured to be asked to take the offertory. I never felt so proud as when wearing my school uniform, I stood next to Mattie in his officer's uniform at the communion table. Here are greetings from Anne Mills, who is the president of the GA 2021 to 2022. I send presidential greetings from the General Assembly of the Unitarian Free Christian Churches to the congregation of the Church of the Divine Unity in Newcastle, and wish you well over the next few months. I do hope that the sale of your premises and all your plans for your newly refurbished portion of the building will go smoothly for you. You're entering a new stage of your church life, which is exciting but challenging too. I will be thinking about you all and wishing you well. And finally, this is from the Reverend Winnie Gordon. My memories of the Newcastle Unitarians was one of generosity and welcome. My first contact with the congregation was when I was awarded a book prize as a student at UCL. What a wonderful gift at a timely time. I was then invited to attend and conduct a worship service. The congregation picked me up at the train station, drove for miles to drive me off to a little bed and breakfast on the coast, and returned the next day to deliver me to worship and later back to the train station. So much attention and expenses just to hear a service from me was a great confidence boost. then to be invited again years later was ministry affirming. While the building may be moving on to new owners, the congregation remains the heart of the community and goes on. May Newcastle Unitarians always be a presence in a city in need of its generosity, and may you continue to transform lives.
Thank you very much, Jean. Brian will now lead us in a gentle guided meditation. The accompanying music is his own composition. Thank you, Brian.
We'll just take a little time to appreciate this magnificent home. Just spend a moment looking around at this spectacular space, at the subtle stained glass, the altar, the reading desk, the bullet, the stunning Art Deco lines and lights. Enjoy the soothing blue tones, the gentle motif, the gorgeous oak keys. And now, make yourself comfortable. Close your eyes if you want. Take a few slow, soothing breaths. Feel your body against the seat. Feel yourself as a part of this home, this moment. Take some time now to recall memories of this place. How did you first come to visit this church? Who did you meet? Have any services and events stayed with you? Do you feel a connection with what this church stands for? Can you hold that feeling in your heart and carry it forward into your future?
Thank you to everyone who has contributed firstly to this service, but secondly to making this congregation what it is. I'd like to invite Lisa now to lead us in a final prayer and benediction. Thank you, Lisa.
Some of us think holding on makes us strong, but sometimes it is letting go. Hermann Hesse, the German Swiss poet, novelist and painter. Change. Here's to change. Here's to transformation. Nothing is static, and all things end. The spirit of this church lives in us, and we carry it with us as we move through life and wherever we hold worship. If you're brave enough to say goodbye, life will reward you with a new hello. Paul Coelho, philosophical novelist. As we extinguish our chalice flame, let us remind ourselves of the values we hold in common and plan to carry forward. We welcome all who seek the meaning of life and who believe that human spirituality is wider than any one tradition and deeper than any one set of opinions. With a respect for our Christian origins, we seek to explore all truths from all sources. Our fellowship gives us strength and encouragement in daily living. May the loving soul of this church live on. May the glory of this building continue anew. May we cherish the past, which has led us to the present. May we celebrate the future and all its opportunities. So be it.